The sun dipped low on the horizon as I entered the kingdom of Eldras, its once glorious towers now crumbling, shadows stretching ominously across the cobblestone streets. I had heard whispers of King Ludric, the tyrant ruler who soaked the land in fear and unrest. His heart, rumored to be as cold as the steel of his executioner's axe, had cast a pall over the kingdom, draining the life from its people. But I was no ordinary traveler. I had come with a plan, armed with nothing but my wits and a burning need for vengeance. The stories of the king's wickedness reached my ears long before I set foot in Eldras. The fear-laden tales of common folk were thick with hopeless despair. Still, I felt a thrill at the prospect of confronting this monstrous ruler. As dusk fell, I made my way to the Silver Arrow, a dimly lit tavern buzzing with the anxious murmurs of the citizens. The air was heavy with distrust, but as I settled on a rickety stool and ordered an ale, I listened intently. I needed to understand the king better to outsmart him. "Have you heard about the king's contest?" A man whispered to his companion, his voice strained. 1,000 gold pieces to anyone who can satisfy his whims. "What whims?" the other questioned, brow furrowing. "Prove yourself cleverer than him, or you'll end up just another fool at the gallows," the man replied, casting a furtive glance around as if the walls themselves could betray him. My heart raced. Here was my inroad. If I could navigate the king's twisted sense of pride, perhaps I could not only win the gold but expose him for the false ruler he truly was. As the sun rose on the morrow, I dressed in my best traveling garb, subtle yet elegant, and made my way to the royal palace. The guards, with their eyes like flint, stood sentinel at the gates, but my confidence prevailed. With charming bravado, I approached them. "I am here to challenge the king," I declared, throat pulsing with adrenaline. The guards exchanged glances, then burst into laughter. "You think you can outsmart King Ludric?" one cackled. But I stood firm, my resolve hardening. "You're mistaken if you believe a mere king frightens me." This caught their attention, and after a brief, skeptical deliberation, they motioned for me to enter. The grand hall was adorned with decadence, banners hanging like sullen ghosts above the opulent throne. King Ludric reclined, an artificial air of superiority shrouding his features. He was older than I expected, his crown glinting under the lustrous chandeliers. His eyes, though pockmarked with wrinkles, burned with a malevolent intelligence. "Another fool with dreams of grandeur," he rasped, eyeing me with contempt. "Pray tell, what makes you believe you can outwit me?" I took a steady breath, meeting his gaze unflinchingly. "What if I said I challenge you to a duel of wits? If I win, you grant me one wish. If you win, I shall forfeit my life." A murmur spread through the courtiers gathered around, their interest piqued. King Ludric leaned forward, intrigued by my audacity. "And what makes you believe you can best me?" I smiled, a strategy already knitting together in my mind. Using his ego against him was the key. "I possess a knowledge of puzzles, riddles that may flummox even the sharpest minds." Ludric stroked his chin, mulling it over. "Very well, let the contest begin. Here's the wager. If you can solve my first riddle, you shall have your life. But for every failed attempt, I shall take another year off your life." I accepted with a steady nod, my heart thundering against my ribcage. The first riddle spilled from his lips like poison. "I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with wind. What am I?" I focused, my mind racing to deconstruct it. The answer came to me like a flash. "An echo?" I replied, my voice strong and unwavering. The king recoiled, disbelief contorting his features, but the courtiers erupted into raucous applause. His arrogance had finally cracked. Ludric seethed, yet he could not deny my answer. "Fool!" he spat, yet the challenge only urged me forward. The second riddle came, darker and more twisted. I can be cracked, made, told, and played. What am I? I felt the weight of my mortality with each breath, the thrill extending to a chilling fear of failure. But with every riddle I solved successfully, the energy in the hall shifted. The people began to murmur, their faith awakening as I chipped away at the king's pride. "A joke," I answered after a moment of contemplation. Ludric's face twisted with rage. "You are too clever for your own good," he growled. The third riddle followed swiftly. "I am not alive, but I grow. I don't have lungs, but I need air. I don't have a mouth, and I can drown. What am I?" "Fire," I said confidently, not missing a beat. The fourth riddle seemed to twist the very air around it. "The more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I?" I pondered, considering the paradox. Then the answer emerged. Footsteps. Ludric's frustration was palpable. He leaned in closer, his voice a venomous whisper. "I have seas without water, coasts without sand, towns without people, mountains without land. What am I?" I hesitated, recalling the halls of memory and wisdom. "A map," I finally said. The fifth riddle emerged, laced with bitter intent. "What flies without wings?" This one took longer, the seconds stretching into an eternity. But clarity dawned. "Time," I said, this time more certain. The sixth riddle carried a weight of finality. "What is so fragile that saying its name breaks it?" "Silence," I responded swiftly, earning a murmur of approval from the crowd. In total, I faced 7 riddles, each more treacherous than the last. With each victory, Ludric's contempt melted into seething anger. The last riddle loomed before me, and I could feel the pulse of the crowd, their hopes pinned to my success. The final riddle was the most cryptic yet. "What has roots as nobody sees is taller than trees. Up, up it goes, and yet never grows." The tension was palpable. I closed my eyes, allowing the silence to focus my thoughts. The answer clicked, almost too simple after the complexity of the previous riddles. A mountain. Silence blanketed the hall. The king, realizing he had been bested, leaned back, eyes filled with barely restrained fury. "You will pay dearly for this humiliation." I smiled, knowing I had prepared for this moment. "Not quite, Your Majesty," I replied, my voice steely. "You owe me a wish. You will release all prisoners wrongfully held in your dungeons, and you shall renounce your throne, allowing the people to find a leader worthy of them." His face warped with rage and disbelief, but as the murmurs from the crowd grew louder, demanding retribution for his cruelty, he found his power waning. The tyrant king ultimately acquiesced, the weight of his own lies breaking his spirit. As King Ludric's voice cracked with capitulation, relief washed over the crowd, and the dimness began to lift. I had not only outsmarted the king but had, in turn, freed the heart of a kingdom. Walking away from the palace, I felt lighter, the shadows receding as the dawn broke. I had won no gold, but the true prize was greater than I could imagine. The freedom of Eldras from the chains of darkness, and that thrill, the knowledge that courage and cunning could indeed topple a tyrant, was worth more than any fortune.